Awesome. Welcome back to another episode of Let the Journey Begin with wonderful Ariel Gale from the Maria Group.
Hi.
And myself, Alex Meschi, the Executive Director of the Red Songbird Foundation. If you haven't already, we have our golf tournament coming up on May 27th. Please make sure you go to www.epicjourneyraising.com to sign up for your foursomes, or if you'd like to sponsor and come on out, meet us at Tejares Creek Golf Course in Orange County. That's where we will be. So hope to see you guys out there. But without further ado, we have Ariel on for another episode. You were saying on the last one, can't wait to come back. Well,
my wish was granted. So
very
here
quickly.
I am.
Yeah, no, and it's great because this show is a little bit different in that none of us are in recovery. But I guarantee you we're going to give you some great tips on purpose and how to find it. Thanks to our wonderful guest for joining us, Angie Wisdom. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited about our conversation.
Yeah, and to give our listeners a little bit of a brief history, the way that we met was through Jason. Mm-hmm. And the way that you met Jason was through a wall, in that you heard him like shouting through it, probably on the phone or something.
That is so true. I was wondering if that was going to come into our conversation.
Well, it has to. We got to build relevancy,
It
right?
was so funny. Yes. I kept hearing this very loud voice and a lot of laughter, a lot of emotion, energy. And I finally was like, I've got to get curious and see like, who is this and what is going on? And I literally went upstairs first to check and was like, oh, it's not there. And, found my way knocking around on doors and going, almost looking for like a sound check. Like,
right.
Say something. Oh, it is you, so that's
funny.
How we met. It was meant to be.
And
That's
lo and
amazing.
behold, now here we are, and call it a higher power or something, the universe aligning. Because after we got to know you, we realized we had this untapped resource literally not just under our nose, but next door to us. Because when we met with you, it sounds like you offer a lot of what the clinicians that we're connected to offer, but from a different perspective. Mm-hmm. In that when they are applying therapy, it's in a clinical state, and you're doing it more in a social state, kind of like how a social worker would do it. Mm-hmm. So let's start with a little bit of a history behind you and how you came to be into this business coach and life coaching situation, let's call it. I know a little bit of it, but let's give the history to the listeners.
Sure. I started my career in the financial industry, and I was helping people managing their money. So I always loved to help people and guide them. I was just a little off base as far as the money management. It wasn't like my passion, but I was really good at helping people and building a business. So I ended up coaching other brokers and started an investment firm with my husband where I coached brokers and helped them raise their business. And it really morphed into a little bit more on the personal development side than business coaching. And I learned a lot about myself and what I was kind of doing wrong and leading my business incorrectly. And so really went through the journey of figuring out how to kind of love yourself and nurture yourself to get the most out of your success. And 25 years later.
So where do you think your passion for helping people and managing their lives comes from?
Well, it's funny because my mother, I mentioned to you earlier, it's not funny that she was an alcoholic, but she was an alcoholic. And so I think that raised me as this helper personality, right? I always wanted to make her happy. I always wanted to serve and do things that would help the situation. So that environment, the way I grew up, made me that helper. And I knew I wanted to help. I thought I was going to be a nurse first. I was like, taking care of people. And then it led over into the money management side and eventually came full circle and really helping people create their best lives and love themselves. So,
well, you literally already threw out the answer without the question being asked, because we were going to ask you when you were a kid, what did you want to be when you got older? And you just said a nurse.
Yes, that was the
probably
first
out of
thing.
The act of helping
Yes.
and wanting to take care of people. And when did that transition into finance?
I was in the nursing program and I was doing volunteer hours at the hospital. And I would come home every night and my husband would hear me like spill everything, and I would literally cry because it like broke my heart. I had so much empathy for the people who were sick. And he was like, are you sure you want to do this your whole life? And you're coming home like crying every day. And it made me realize like that helping was not the right thing for me, from a healthy standpoint for me, because I was just super empathetic and it was too much.
And it sounds like this was while you were already almost on the way to becoming a nurse.
Yes. I mean, I was in doing my volunteer hours. I had already finished my first 2 years and had 2 more to go. And
that's quite the wake-up call to be 2 years into a program or being in college. I'm sure a lot of college kids can relate where they're, junior year, senior year, wait a minute, I don't want to do this.
Right.
So how did you navigate that once you had the kind of moment of clarity of, I don't want to do this, I want to do something else? Then what'd you do?
It's not a very complex story, but it's pretty simple. And I pivoted quickly. I mean, I worked at a bank at the time, so I'd already been in kind of the financial industry and was doing that as a job until I went through nursing school. And as soon as I decided like, hey, this is not the right fit for me, it wasn't, I swear it felt like the next day I was doing an auto loan for one of my customers, and he repeatedly bought like Corvettes. And this was a long time ago when they were like super cool, right? And I was like, what do you do? And he was like, well, I'm a financial advisor. And I was like, maybe I'm going to do that, And he told me what he did, helping people with their money and everything. And I was like, I like the sound of that. I'm still helping people, but I'm helping them build their financial future and their nest egg. I literally like went to his office and tried to get a job. And it's where I ended up started working.
Really, really lit that motivation under you, it sounds like.
Yeah, I decide quickly. But, I was going to say, you bring up such a great point about like kids in college and all of a sudden a couple of years in, you're like, oh, this isn't what I want to do. And I think it's neat now in high school, they have ways for you to experience some of that before you commit. Like, I thought I wanted to be a nurse until I got my hands in it. 2 years in, I had no way of knowing like what it was actually going to feel like.
But it sounds like that wasn't fulfilling for you because you made another career move and got out of managing people's finances and into managing their lives.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And I enjoyed, like, I love numbers and money and investing. I love that part of it. But when it came to me helping people with their financial future, there's only so much in your control. Right? Like we could do all the right things, but we're at the mercy of the market, right? There's a lot of other factors that go involved into getting the win and the victory. And I found out when I started working with people on helping them raise their business, there were controllables there, right? If I did my job and the other person did their job, it was definitely a recipe for success. Right? There was no uncontrollables in that scenario. So A plus B was, going to give us the right result.
So it sounds like a shifting of less variables, more constants.
You got it.
Okay.
Yes.
So what sort of life coaching do you specialize in?
It's broad. I mean, sometimes people are coming to me and they've got a $25, $50 million company that they're trying to, get to that next level that, or maybe they're not fulfilled with, and they really want to figure out what's missing. And then other people who have everything they thought they could possibly want, but don't have joy, or maybe they're overwhelmed and they're stressed. So it's really just a matter of going, what do you want different in your life? What do you want to change? Where, aren't you fulfilled, and working from that place?
Do you notice a pattern?
Oh, for sure.
What would you say probably the single most predictor of unhappinesses that you've seen?
Not living your values, striving for something in the future, striving for a particular moment, a particular goal, and not living in the present moment and actually enjoying what fills you up. And people take for granted our values. Our values are what give us energy. They give us joy. They refuel us. And we take those for granted, and we think we don't need certain things. And we focus all of our efforts on, other people, or getting to that goal, or getting that next item. And really, if you don't have your values, you don't have anything at all.
So when you're saying values, are you talking about like your own interests and hobbies? Are you talking like ethics and morals? What do you mean by values exactly?
A combination of both. I mean, if I asked you, like, what fills your cup? What brings you joy on a daily basis that you couldn't go without?
If you're asking me personally, I would say if I can help somebody either learn something or procure something that is not just in that moment, but a future resource as well, that's what usually fills my cup.
Okay. So that would be a value for you. That it might be connection. It might be accomplishment. It might be capable and competent. But it's about, maybe family time is a value for somebody. Spirituality might be a value for somebody. So it's about everything that you can put in your cup on a daily basis that is going to give you joy and give you energy to move on.
Well, it's crazy that you just gave me 3 adjectives that I would totally agree with based on one statement, because the biggest joy, now I'm just talking on a very small scale and somewhat, materialistic or surface level, but like building furniture or building a Lego set, the fact that you have the accomplishment, you can see it, and it's something, right?
Yes.
Like those are the things. Anytime I can build something that is visible, and it may not be productive in the most productive sense, but furniture, you build a desk or a couch or whatever, you see your efforts. Whereas, the things that don't bring me joy are when I feel like I'm spinning my wheels and I'm not seeing anything materialize out of it, and it just feels like wasted energy and effort.
Right.
So
right.
I totally get that.
Yeah. So those are your values, and everybody has values, and a lot of them you live and you don't even know it. So it's like there's not even effort involved in it. We have our values that we kind of grow up with, and so then you automatically lean into them, right? If you love going to sporting events, or you love going to amusement parks, you love excitement and activities, you kind of lean into that, right? And you just naturally do it. If you love being with your family, probably just lean into it and make plans with them. But there's other values that we really need to kind of feel fulfilled that we neglect because they don't involve other people or because they're not part of our job. And those are the ones that you really have to be careful of. Like alone time is one of my favorite values. And I have to have alone time every single day, or I am not 100%.
So now how do you help people identify these values? Because it feels like with all the distractions in life today in society, whether it's social media or politics or the news or sports or work or spouse or whatever, it feels like there are all these distractions to keep you from those values, which I would argue is why a lot of people tend to fall off the wagon and go in a downward spiral, whether that is in or out of substance use and mental health. You have people that aren't abusing substances that aren't having mental health issues, but they're still having a downward spiral in their overall life trajectory, let's call it. How do you help people find that kind of purpose or that motivation or those values for them to really lean on for that joy and to help them get to the next step, whether it's more achievement or accomplishment or more joy with family or what have you?
Right. It's, kind of a 2-step process. One, identifying them, right? And some people can really name right off the bat, like some of their values. Oh, I love excitement, or I love family time. Okay, great. But the other ones, it's asking a question like I just asked you, what fills you up? And you're like, you said something very specific, right, of working with people, but then we can really extract like, what's that theme there? The accomplishment. And then you're going, oh yeah, I love to build furniture. I love to, find accomplishment in other ways. So your value is that accomplishment, but you can get it in so many different ways. Like you probably feel fulfilled when you complete even a project, or if you get up at the, right time and you get a workout in or something, there's this satisfaction.
Yeah, that was this morning. I got up early enough to make breakfast for the first time in a year.
Accomplishment, right? There you go. So like you feel that value. So it's first kind of looking at what those values are, and we extract them through stories. Some people say, well, I don't really know. Nothing fills me up right now. Okay, well, take me back to when it did. And I'll have some clients, they have to go back to like high school. They're like, well, 35 years ago, I used to love when I led this club or when I was on stage. And it's like, oh, okay, you like leadership, you like recognition and acknowledgement. But we have to extract when those moments of joy were.
Do you ever see it going to the other side of the spectrum where people maybe hold too much weight into their values and it's kind of taking them from either what really are their values or borders on the line of, let's say, addiction even?
Yes, absolutely. And some personalities, I'm a big fan of the Enneagram Assessment, which is a personality assessment and kind of gives you an idea of your natural tendencies. And one of them is called an enthusiast, and they love everything. So they'll be like, here's my values, I've got 30 of them. And it's just not possible, right? They get diluted. You can't live your life in the space of, okay, I'm going to get these 30 values in today. We just don't have the capacity for it. So it's important to really kind of get people to hone in on, well, if you had to pick one, and getting them to a space. And that second step I was going to tell you about, speaking of, does it get to be too much or like addiction? It's about how do you get that value in your life, right? So we have to have a very clear vision. If somebody likes a high degree of excitement, right, and you have an addictive personality, we have to make sure we're going, okay, what else could you be doing that's going to give you that high degree of excitement that is a healthy habit for you?
Sounds almost like therapy.
A little bit, I walk that line. Therapy is about recovering from things, right? And coaching is very much about what do we do going forward?
That's an interesting way to put it. So then would you say that the difference between therapy and what you do is that therapy is from the past to present and what you do is from the present to future?
Pretty much. Like people say therapy is about recovery, coaching is about discovery.
That's beautiful. I love that.
So I would imagine that it's exciting to discover values, but I would also imagine it's probably hard to fulfill them on a daily basis. So what are hangups? What prevents people from fulfilling their values on a daily basis?
The number one thing, giving themselves time. We're a given-driven society. We think that we need to give all that we have and that we can always be without. And it's just so opposite of that. We have to fill up in order to really give what we have. And so getting people to realize that, that client's going to be okay. Your husband can wait another 15 minutes. Your boss doesn't expect you to work at 11 o'clock at night. Like, where's the time for you? And that's the biggest shift that people have to have, is that getting your values in is not selfish. It's actually selfish to not get them in, because if you get your values in, you're showing up for other people at the top of your game. If you don't get your values in, you're showing up as a different version of who you could be, right? Maybe a little bit more stressed, maybe burnout, maybe unhappy, maybe short-tempered, right? Because you're not getting what you need.
It's the age-old adage, you can't pour from an empty cup,
yes,
right?
absolutely.
It's just hearing it in a way to make you actually believe it for once. So I got a question.
Yeah.
As far as making the time for yourself, and you mentioned that we are in a gear-driven society. So I'm aware in other cultures, namely Asian cultures, they have words where the activity or what you're doing, we would call loitering, basically. You go to like a cafe or whatever. You don't do anything. You're not on your phone. You're not there for socializing. You're literally there to just hang out. And that's it. And they have words for that, whereas we don't have that in English. There's no direct translation. But the funny thing when I was reading about this notion is that as far as Western civilization or Western society looks at Eastern culture, like I see Japanese culture as being very rigid, very strict, very like you need to be perfect or else it's, the path is seppuku at that point, right? But then you hear that they have these words that mean hang out, where I think kind of optics of Americans are that, we're lazy or whatever, but we're literally running 1,000,000 miles an hour all the time. And we don't have that word where the activity is to literally hang out and do nothing. We can say we're hanging out, but we're usually socializing, or, nobody ever goes to a bar by themselves to just chill. And if they are, you're questioning if they're okay, or nobody ever really goes to a restaurant to just sit there and not eat, then you're just loitering or taking up space, right? But elsewhere they do. So how do you suggest balance between these two? Because to me, it sounds like one or the other isn't the end all be all. You need to make time for yourself, but we are in a gear driven society. So then is the responsibility then on the individual to kind of set those boundaries, or is it, for lack of better words, society needs to change?
I think one path is easier than the other.
That's a good point. Society, we're going to change it, right?
Yeah, right. Of course. That's today. It starts now, right? I think one by one, as people change their perspective or perception of that, then society starts to change. And I think we have seen that. I mean, from my standpoint, like the generation of my parents or me, even my generation, we're like, go, 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 right? It was you didn't put in a solid day's worth of work if you only worked 8 hours and you serve from an empty cup. That's the way it was, but it's not the way it is now. Like it almost kind of went the other extreme, right? I have clients that come to me that are in their mid-20s and they've got a totally different perspective on what work looks like and are very balanced. So I think there's a change happening, but as far as like people embracing that, it can be so small, like 15 minutes. I started a process for my clients. It's called the morning mindset. And it's literally sitting down for 15 minutes with yourself in the morning and being conscious about, what you want in your day, what you're affirming yourself to be, what intentions you want to have. Where's your gratitude? That right there could probably fill 3 to 4 values for almost any person.
All in 15 minutes.
In 15 minutes, right? I mean, my values are spirituality, alone time, accomplishment, capable and competent. I get all of those in 15 minutes.
So 15 minutes could be enough in
Sure.
a day to fulfill somebody's values.
Absolutely. My other values are filled through the work that I do.
Right.
But I don't get alone time at work, so I got to make that a separate time.
So could it be said that as far as evaluating your values and kind of how they affect your day-to-day life and stuff, would it be that people need to take the time to focus on those values that they can't get from others or from work or from being social or whatever? Focus on those, the rest of the pieces fall into place, and then overall the picture becomes better. Is that something you'd say you agree to?
That's a great way to put it. Absolutely. And when I sit down and do values with somebody, they'll often say like, oh, I get that. Like that already shows up in their life through work or through their time with their family. And then it's these couple stragglers that they're like, oh, but how do I get that in? I would love that. And then it's about, exploring and going, well, what would it look like in your life?
Do you think a big portion of it is identifying it? A lot of people lose sight because of all the so-called noise that's out there.
Absolutely. Sometimes people think their values are what they're getting, even though they're not. Like I'll have somebody who, has such a busy life. They work 12 hours a day. And even when they're not working, things are still hectic. They're like, oh, I value a busy life. And it's like, do you really? Like, you love that, but it's really just what they're getting right now. So you almost start to try to embrace it, because if you didn't, it would be resistant,
Right. And it's almost as if you're working against yourself.
Yes.
And maybe they're valuing their busy life because it's helping to distract from other things.
For sure.
So, so interesting.
It's a little tricky, but it's definitely the first and core piece in going like, who am I? What's going to fill me up, bring me joy, and energize me?
Purpose. Which, I mean, Jason can attest, that's usually the first thing to go when someone's struggling with addiction. Mental health, obviously, is kind of the outlier, but addiction typically, people with purpose have a direction.
Sure.
And the direction's usually forward. So how, I'm sure you've seen clients from you said from mid-20s, and I'm sure you've seen older than all of us in this room. When you see these individuals and they're not having that purpose, or they're not able to identify their values, what's step one for them? How do you get them in the right mindset to be able to be open-minded, to see these values and identify that purpose? Because a lot of people, I feel like, get stuck in the rut. To your point, I value busyness, being busy all the time. No, that's probably just what you got thrown into, like you just mentioned. How do you get out of it?
Fortunately for me, they come to me when they're ready for change. Right. So I'm not trying to convince anyone to do this. And you really can't. It has to be somebody who's motivated to have something different in their life. So by the time they come to me, if they're the most successful version of themselves they can be, but they're unhappy, that's their motivation, right? They're like, how do I get joy in my life?
Right.
And then we move into values. Or if, they're not as successful as they could be because they're unmotivated, then they've got motivation, right? Like, I don't want to be in this place. I want to have more success. And again, we're going, okay, well, what fuels you up? What gives you that energy? Why aren't you motivated? And it's usually because they're not tending to themselves. So it isn't usually like a hard sell on somebody embracing it. It's just kind of turning on that light bulb, right? For them to understand why, they need to start looking at their values and embracing them.
All of that sounds very much like trying to help people get into addiction treatment. They got to buy into it. Once they're there, then they have the way forward. So in talking with your clients, and granted, they're coming to you when they're open for that discovery. Let's say for our audience that may not have access to you.
Sure.
Or they're just listening to this podcast. Is there anything that they can do to help them identify their values or purpose or a motivation or any sort of solution or action that they can just stop what they're doing and right now do something to make their life better?
Yeah. Get out a piece of paper, write down, try to come up with 7 to 8 things that either make you happy, fill you up right now, or even when you were a kid. I don't care. Any time in your life, think back. What really, put a smile on my face, put a warm feeling in my heart, and you'll come up with some of these ideas. Even if it's not now, even when people are in a darker place and they're in a place of struggle, you can get them back to like, well, before struggle, what made you happy? And when they start kind of replaying those old memories, those values will pop up. Well, I used to love it when I was outside and I'd just go on hikes, right? Okay, they probably love being in nature. It's probably a value. How do you start getting out in nature every day? I don't care whether it's 5 minutes sitting outside.
What's funny is as you're talking about this and kind of working through the actions, I literally feel like I'm listening to an audio tape of your book that's sitting on my kitchen island that I look at every morning because it's literally what you wrote in that book. Now, I'm not trying to plug a book, everybody, but everything she just said, and as simple as it sounds, if you need a book for a guideline, she has one and it's great. It's on our website. But no joke. Like when I got your book, I'll be perfectly transparent. I opened it and I said, all right, another one of these. And then I'm like, all right, let me just give it a shot for a week. And I started going through it and stuff. And I'm like, it's so simple, but it works. And that's the thing that always blows my mind, in that this isn't all that complicated. We make it that way.
Yes.
We really do complicate it.
It's so true.
And it seems like the quote of the week is, life's not complicated, people are. And that's really, where things like your book or resources like you have helped even someone like me that didn't even know I needed it. Just like how recovery's also helped me in ways that I didn't even know I needed it. And it's crazy for me. I'll speak for myself. The synergy between the two things. I mean, it's like you could pull that line out and it'd still be the same thing, in that you're helping people reignite that passion, get them in the right direction, and set them with a proper plan and strategy to accomplish what they want to accomplish based on what's important to them.
Absolutely. Once you know what's important to you, then you can move into this place of making decisions around that. But right now, people make decisions the majority of the time on their feelings, right? I don't feel like doing this. Oh, I don't feel like going here. And it's all based upon the feelings that are based upon your circumstances, your environment, everything going on around you. And that'll lead you astray, a million times over, right? I mean, whether it's from a substance abuse problem or, just dealing with your everyday life and the goals that you have. If you base your decisions on how you feel in the moment, you probably got a 50% chance that you're going to do something that agrees with your values.
So interesting. I mean, all of it sounds so simple, but it's actually not. Just identifying values and finding the time to, fulfill them. It sounds like a no-brainer, but it actually is probably the hardest thing to do.
It's work. Yeah, it really is. I mean, look, 90% of what goes on in our mind is our subconscious. So everything that we've ever dealt with before is guiding our actions and our thoughts. And so when you finally start to embrace like, oh my gosh, I want a better life, I want more success, whatever it is that you want, that means you have to step in and start being more conscious of those thoughts and choosing the right ones.
Yeah, it's crazy how powerful your mind is.
Yeah.
It's horrible when it's working against you.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. I mean, mindset, getting people to control their thoughts is a game changer because we have the ability. We just don't often use it because we're going so fast, right?
Right. No, this was great. Very insightful. I feel like we got a lot of great morsels for people to really lean on and help them find those values and find that direction. So thank you so much for joining us. If people wanted to get connected with you, find out more about you and your practice, where can they find you?
Instagram is easy, Angie Wisdom Life Coach. I do so much content and, free kind of worksheets for values and stuff to try to help people. And then my website's easy too, angiewisdom.com. So easy name.
That is wisdom. As it sounds. Spelled as it sounds.
Yes.
Brian will have all the info down below.
Yeah. And that's her real last name, folks.
It is, not a stage name.
It's the credibility. It's there. But no, absolutely. Check her out. Follow her Instagram. If you want to look at her book, it's on our website. Feel free to check it out, purchase it. None of the proceeds are coming to us, but we strongly support what's in it, and we believe it's helpful. So do take a look. And we'll see you and hopefully see you again, Ariel.
Hopefully.
Next time on Let the Journey Begin.